Demanding an end to the Mubarak era in Tahrir Square, Egypt's Muslim Brotherhood calls for a political ban against members of the former regime. Who stands to gain from the power struggle for the presidency? And will this derail the country's democratic transition? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Darine Abougaida. Together against the remnants of the former regime. That's the demand of Egypt's leading parties, the Muslim Brotherhood and the Salafist Front, as they called for a 1 million-man march in Tahrir Square. Both don't want members from the Mubarak era to hold any positions of power in post-revolution Egypt. Despite liberals sharing these demands, many, including the April 6th movement and the Revolutionary Youth Coalition, didn't take part in Friday's march. Well, this is not the first time the Muslim Brotherhood has called for people to gather in Tahrir. Let's take a look at what sparked this latest demonstration. It all began on the 31st of March. That's when the Muslim Brotherhood fielded its candidate, Khairat al-Shater, for the presidency, having promised they would not nominate anyone from within the organization. In response, Omar Suleiman, once Hosni Mubarak's vice president in his last days in office, made a last-minute announcement that he would also run for the presidency. Well, this announcement was swiftly followed by a law passed in Parliament, and the Muslim Brotherhood hold nearly half the seats in that Parliament. That law banned top officials who served under Mubarak from becoming president. But this law is yet to be approved by the Military Council. So who will be the winner of the ongoing power struggle over in Egypt? For more on this, I'm joined by our guests. So we have with us from Cairo, Wael Eskandar. He's a blogger and writer for Al-Ahram Online. Also from Cairo, Nader, Omran, representative and co-founder of the Freedom and Justice Party under the Muslim Brotherhood. And from Ottawa in Canada, Adel, a professor at Georgetown University in the Center for Contemporary Arab Studies. Adel is also writing an upcoming book on the Egyptian Revolution. I welcome all of you gentlemen to this edition of Inside Story. Adel Iskander, if I can come over to you first in Ottawa, what will the Military Council do? Will it pass the law that bars Omar Suleiman from running for the presidency?
Well, the Military Council is being taken to the absolute brink now. I mean, they've been challenged for the past year by the various factions of the revolutionary youth, but they never suspected that the Muslim Brotherhood and the Salafis, two parties or two groups that had for the longest time been quite agreeable to the Military Council's conduct of the transition. So this is a huge challenge for them. I imagine that if they want to move forward with Egypt, that they need to sort of let go of the old regime entirely. And this is one of the blemishes in the Supreme Council for the Armed Forces management of the transition, that they remain extremely stubborn in trying to disband the remnants of the old regime. So I think the Muslim Brotherhood and the Salafis, with a little bit of muscle, political muscle in the parliament, are trying to push them. But nevertheless, the parliament has little to no mandate. So the most that they can do is offer a no confidence vote and recommendations, but the Military Council remains steadfast in making sure that they're the ones steering the country in the direction that they see fit.
Right, but what will the Military Council do? Will it pass the law or will it bar it?
I think the Military Council will bar the law, largely because they have individuated the members of the old regime. They want to be able to see members of the regime continue to be part of the Egyptian political process. Not to forget the fact that the members of the old regime also hold significant economic resources and assets in the country. So this is a power play at the highest possible level, and I don't think the Military Council is ready to forego this. Nevertheless, they are being pushed to the brink. I mean, the Muslim Brotherhood and the Salafis' presence on the streets in Egypt, across Egypt, but mostly in Tahrir Square, is a way for them to flex some muscle and say, we have legitimacy not just in the elected bodies, but also populist support in the street. So the Military Council will have to be able to justify retaining some connections with the old regime and absolving them of wrongdoing in the past. But at the end of the day, the Military Council themselves are members of the old regime. So this might come back to bite them in a way that they may not be able to escape. This will incriminate everyone.
All right.
So I think they're trying to insulate themselves.
Okay, Nader, Omran, the Muslim Brotherhood certainly wants this law to be approved by the Military Council because it passed it in Parliament, but there are some who say that Egypt is now on the path to democracy. So Omar Suleiman should be allowed to run for president because this is democracy at the end of the day.
Yes, it is. Yes, actually, we've been taken to the streets today in order to bring more pressure to bear on the SCAF, the Military Council, to pass this law, and also to let everybody know that the revolution is still on the street. The revolution is not ended, it's not complete yet. So we need this law to be passed because it's a kind of a fine line between removal of the previous regime and applying democracy. So we want the removal of the regime.
Right,
Our
but passing this law means
inside the revolution.
Apologies, Nader, but passing this law means that you are barring some candidates, and some say this is unconstitutional.
Actually, if it's unconstitutional, this is up to the court, but we are doing our duty as representatives for the people who gave us responsibility to represent them. We have to bring pressure on the SCAF to pass this law because it's not logic. I mean, we made a revolution to get rid of the regime, and meanwhile we find the deputy of the president of this regime as one of the pillars of this regime is nominating himself for a presidency. So it doesn't make sense.
Wael Eskandar, I'll come to you in just a moment, but Nader, just one more question to you, because this law does not apply to former ministers, meaning that the former foreign minister, Amr Moussa, he's still allowed to go ahead with his candidacy for presidency in Egypt. So if you want this law passed, then why not apply it to all remnants of the former regime? Why is it only the president, vice president and prime minister?
Actually, it has been there for the parliament, sorry, for just one day, and it has been up to voting, and so many people suggested some kind to ban, let's say, for 5 years or 10 years, or all the previous minister or whatever. So this is the final formula that most of the parliament have agreed on.
Wael Eskandar, from what you saw in the demonstrations today in Tahrir Square and the turnout that the Muslim Brotherhood had called for, and people did come out onto Tahrir Square, what do the numbers tell you about the support that the Muslim Brotherhood has?
The Muslim Brotherhood has always been able to get people to go out in protests. In the past, they have done it before, on the 17th of November. And several other instances. And when the Muslim Brotherhood calls for protests, a lot of their followers and supporters do go out in numbers. But that does not mean that they have the support of everyone in Egypt, or the political factions or the revolutionary factions. This protest is a sign of political opportunism, at least according to a lot of the people that have been out on the streets in revolution before. So I don't think that the numbers actually mean that there's a popular support amongst the revolutionary, all the factions of the people.
All right, so what's your take on the law, and what will the Military Council do? Will it pass the law or will it bar it?
I think the Military Council might pass the law if the former ministers are allowed to run, because they have Amr Moussa, who still has a really good chance of winning these elections. But I think overall there's a political struggle between the Muslim Brotherhood and the military over the presidency, and we can see Omar Suleiman's running is a response to El Shater's candidacy. So they might pass it if they're sure that their candidate will make it to be president.
Adel Iskander, why do you think Omar Suleiman has put forward his presidency? Is he just trying to hold on to power, or is he really tied to the Military Council? Is he their candidate for presidency, as some say?
I think the Supreme Council for the Armed Forces is probably smart enough not to put all of their eggs in one basket. So investing in Omar Suleiman, even though they facilitated his candidacy in quite significant ways, one clear example are photographs of him submitting his petitions to allow him to be a candidate in this election, being delivered by the Republican/presidential guard. So an extremely high-level military facilitation on the part of Omar Suleiman's candidacy. So this is an indication that there might be a tacit endorsement by the Supreme Council for Omar Suleiman, but nevertheless the Supreme Council can walk away or go into this election feeling quite comfortable that at least 3 or 4 of the candidates that are running, can't call them essentially front runners with the exception of Amr Musa, are not necessarily adversarial to SCAF. And so in the end they stand to gain, but their concern is of the Muslim Brotherhood specifically. It appears as though there was a break in the relationship between the Brotherhood and SCAF. There was an agreement that the Muslim Brotherhood would not field a candidate and would not run for the highest level, the executive branch, and they violated it for reasons that they find quite justifiable. But nevertheless, the military won't let them get away with that, and so the military will spread its votes or spread its support across candidates that they believe might be competitive against the Muslim Brotherhood candidates and any other revolutionary candidate like Abdel Menem Abu Futuh, former Muslim Brotherhood leader. So in the end, the military wants to come out on top, but they've also built an architecture that privileges their candidates. I mean, you have to remember that the Supreme Council for the Armed Forces drafted the constitutional amendments. They put together the guiding principles for the Constitution. They've created a high election commission to govern the presidential election that cannot be appealed. And so all the conditions are set by the military council. So we may be looking at a presidential election that will produce results that are favorable for SCAF, irrespective of public opinion.
And Nader, Omran, would you like to respond to that?
Yes, I think today's protest proves that there hasn't been any kind of deal between Muslim Brotherhood and SCAF for the past more than 1 year. But actually our stance from the SCAF is like this: if they do something right, we say it's right. If they do something wrong, we say it's wrong. And that's the point. We are not against them all the time. We are not with them all the time. So when it comes to this kind of conflict these days about presidency, we are against them. The people have to choose their president from real civil presidents and real people who support the revolution, not from the previous regime. This is something I don't think anybody from the revolution or even from the grassroots of Egypt could deny him.
Well, Nader, let me ask you this, because the Muslim Brotherhood originally said that they wouldn't put forward a candidate for presidency. Now that has changed with the Khairat al-Shatir trying to run for presidency, even though there are questions, legal questions surrounding that, which we won't get into. But why the change of heart on the behalf of the Muslim Brotherhood?
Actually, that change was shows the flexibility of the visions of Muslim Brotherhood. Actually, at the very beginning, we said we just wanted to take part in this responsibility. Sorry. And we won't take all the executive power in Egypt. Actually, when we got majority in the parliament and we tried to apply our platform, which the FGP has promised the people before elections, we found out that our party has no power to form form a cabinet. So that's why we moved to the presidency. This was a bitter option, but we had to apply it. Otherwise, we will lose the trust of the people.
Wael Eskandar, what's your response? Nader talking about the trust on behalf of the Muslim Brotherhood. What would you like to respond?
Yes, I would like to say that the Muslim Brotherhood does indeed change their position all the time, and one of the examples is their position on the government. They did not respond to the government's killing of protesters, and they accused protesters of being infiltrators. They're certainly changing their perspective, but I think that they're only changing their points of view when it affects the Muslim Brotherhood's gains. As Nader pointed out, that they realize they don't have power to form government, and this is the only time they moved. But they did not move when activists were tried in military courts. They did not move when a woman was part stripped in Tahrir in December. They're moving only to their, to their political gains, for their political gains. So I think that that part of change is true, but I don't believe that they're doing this for the good of the people, but only for their own political interests.
Nader, are you doing this for your own political gain? Is the Muslim Brotherhood, is that what the Muslim Brotherhood is doing?
Actually, that's what I call it's kind of excavation of intentions. So nobody can know what's inside. So I'm not going to defend myself in something which is inside. Let's just judge the acts, not the intentions.
Well, I would like you to respond to what Wael Eskandar is saying.
When you are just trying to excavate the intentions of some people, you cannot prove otherwise. So they have to prove why he says so. I don't have to prove it. We have acts. We have to judge acts.
Yes. Yes, my proof for why this is based on self-interest is because the Muslim Brotherhood, the day they attacked the military, was the same, with their statement, is the same day they had the Constituent Assembly formed with mostly Brotherhood members, with a lot of political parties expressing their dissent. And even today, as they're organizing a protest that's for people, they're doing it on a day that's not available for Copts to participate because it's Good Friday. So they have alienated a lot of the political parties in the Constituent Assembly and even in these protests that are organized today.
Adel Iskander, do you think that a lot of parties have been alienated in Friday's protest, and has it been done on purpose? What's your opinion?
I think a lot of parties have been alienated, not because of this protest specifically, but because of the fact that the Muslim Brotherhood has, to a large extent, been speaking out of two sides of its own mouth. And just to kind of respond to what Nader has stated about not judging intentions, it was a delegation of the FJP visiting Washington, D.C. about a week to 10 days ago that stated quite clearly to a public forum that there was an agreement between the Muslim Brotherhood and the Supreme Council for the Armed Forces that there was a particular limit to how far the Muslim Brotherhood would rule, and since the Supreme Council for the Armed Forces didn't keep its end of the bargain, there were consequences. So I think to a large extent the Muslim Brotherhood appears in the eyes of everyone who isn't a follower of the institution that they are acting out of pragmatism, and pragmatism sounds great, but not in a revolutionary circumstance. We're talking about hundreds of individuals who've been killed during the transition period by the Supreme Council for the Armed Forces and the transitional government, and the Muslim Brotherhood was deafeningly silent, and that is something that will be held against them historically. So I think that they're taking the necessary steps to try and bridge the divide, but it's lost on a lot of people, and that's part of the reason why you see that Tahrir Square does not represent a cross-section of the revolution. Most people who are members of the revolutionary forces look at the Muslim Brotherhood and believe that they are either inconsistent with the revolutionary demands, or at the very least are trying to take advantage of the revolution. So when it's convenient for them, they will confront SCAF, but when confrontations are on Mohammed Mahmoud Street, on Maspiro, I mean, you've got literally tens, if not hundreds of people killed, and little to no response from the Muslim Brotherhood. In fact, endorsing the government of Kemal Ganzouri when it was firing bird spray and rubber bullets.
Those accusations, Adel, have certainly been made against the military as well. And some people in Egypt say, why should we trust the military when hundreds of people died during the revolution and the military didn't do anything?
I think these accusations are very much in place. Everybody realizes now that the military has not acted in the best interests of the revolution, that maybe they're not the guardians of the revolution as they may have described themselves, but it's a little too late for the Muslim Brotherhood. It's been a good 13 months of absolute silence against these highly criminal actions on the part of the military, and I think they've really disenchanted a significant proportion of the revolutionary body of Egypt. So it's going to be an uphill battle for them to win them over. I see that there are positive signs in Tahrir Square today in the fact that the discourse of the Muslim Brotherhood and the Salafis is one of unity. They come out and they say we're one hand, we're all together. It's not just the Islamists, but I think the proof is in the pudding. And so far, the Muslim Brotherhood until today had not done much to commit themselves to the revolution that we were supposed to be celebrating.
All right. Well, as we're saying, Egypt is just weeks away from its first presidential election in the post-Mubarak era, but it still faces some serious obstacles to stability. First, there are legal wranglings have meant work on a new constitution have been halted and unlikely to be ready in time for the new president. There's also the ongoing mistrust of the Muslim Brotherhood and the military council, as we're saying. Both have been criticized for going back on their promises. And finally, the weak state of the economy has added to instability. In the midst of Egypt's power struggle, the economy has been neglected. Foreign currency reserves have shrunk, and tourism, once Egypt's main source of revenue, is on the decline. Wael Eskandar, have the public in Egypt lost faith in the revolution?
Yeah, I wouldn't say they lost faith in the revolution, but I can say that they see the revolution as not going the way they intended it in the first place. They have been clamped down on. They've been suppressed. Not just by the military, but by the complicity of political parties who hailed the military as guardians of the revolution, while all they did was actually be the counter-revolution. So there's a sense that the revolution isn't on its course. We know it's going to take a long time. I feel that people, though, they're just waiting for the right moment, and they will rise again when the opportunity comes. But at this moment, it's all a lot of political debacle back and forth.
And when you talk about an opportunity, what exactly are you referring to when you talk about an opportunity? What type of opportunity?
The opportunity is something that we can unite on and we can call for to happen, to actually happen. Not something like for political gains, like small demands for political gains, but something like a situation where change is inevitable. And at the moment, there's just too much politics. There's hope of the presidential elections, which I think is false hope for the revolution. And at the very end, I think that when all other channels are exhausted, people will hit the streets again.
Nader, Omran, there is the view that the Muslim Brotherhood is risking making the same mistakes that the Mubarak regime did. They're hungry for power. Does that concern you and your fellow colleagues at all?
Yeah, I think there's. Let me first of all disagree with the definition of revolutionaries and Muslim Brotherhood. This last year's revolution represented all the Egyptian people. So Muslim Brotherhood were chosen by the Egyptian people to represent them in parliament and to achieve their goals. So anybody else or anybody wants to put obstacles in front of these achievements, he is the one that the people are going to, revolt on or going to object, not the Muslim Brotherhood themselves. So Muslim Brotherhood have their own platform. We want to accelerate the reform in Egypt, and being labeled with hunger or of power. What hunger of power? Actually, the people who are going to take power or take responsibility for the next 5 years are going to have a very big problem. A country which has been ignored for 60 years. So it's a big responsibility, not a cake.
Adel, Iskander, final thoughts from you.
I think to a large extent Egypt is approaching a major sort of fork in the road. The revolutionary forces and the Muslim Brotherhood have been at odds, unfortunately. The Muslim Brotherhood have a prime opportunity to prove that they've gone back and revisited their priorities, and that they're committed to the continuation of the revolution, and that they will open their arms and accept all political factions irrespective of their ideology and perspective, so that they can move together. But at this this point, all signs point to a problematic and very turbulent period, and the Supreme Council for the Armed Forces remains at the helm, guiding and navigating the process. So we have yet to see what will become of this in the next month and a half, and how it will yield a presidential seat in the end once we assess it.
All right. Thank you very much to all my guests for joining us on this edition of Inside Story. Wael Eskandar from Cairo, also from Cairo, Nader, Omran, and Adel Iskander from Ottawa. Thanks very much. And thanks to our viewers, of course, for joining us on this edition. If you want to send us your feedback, you can always do so. Email your thoughts to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. Thanks for watching. From me and the whole team, goodbye for now.